I'm thinking of the right order to say things. Probably the best way to go about it is first start with a bit of a provocative statement. On fuel policy, I mean, I listened with great sympathy to what Matthew had to say as oil industry representative on decarbonizing fuels. But at the same time, at this very moment, the same industry is lobbying very hard to further emasculate the Fuel Quality Directive proposal that is currently doing the rounds in the Commission to avoid any sort of transparency, let alone accountability, for the carbon footprint of its products. That is well known, very well documented. And it's not just the oil industry that is resisting efforts to be very clear about the carbon footprint of its different kind of products. It's also the biofuel industry. With the oil industry, the problem is the unconventional and the more dirtier fuels. With the biofuels, it's the ILUC emissions. So, both industries are okay with classifying certain amounts of emissions, but those that are actually quite inconvenient, ILUC or unconventionals, let's leave those aside. Well, if you can't even start to agree to measure those emissions or to make them more transparent, how can you ever regulate them, So shouldn't the conclusion be, here comes the provocative bit, let's just forget about all these carbon fuels, because these fuels, we are not going to decarbonize them. There's just no political will or industrial will or lobby will, whatever you want to call it, to start measuring these things properly, let alone regulate them. So the only conclusion you can draw is they are disqualified. And then the next conclusion is, we need to move to something that at least doesn't emit at the tailpipe, so hydrogen or electricity. And we need to finally start biting the bullet. Keeping options open, that's all good and well. But, there's lots of others who don't keep options open. And in that sense, I would very much disagree with photos that the only objective should be to keep everything rolling. I would think there's also an objective to make sure that Europe plays part in the industry of the future and not just the industry of the past. And as more specifically on e-mobility, one of the things that I regret very much is that it is just about passenger mobility. So integrating freight, thinking longer distance, thinking interurban, what do we do with our future infrastructure? Are we going to work with induction? Are we going to work with overhead lines? Can we design charging in a way that both cars and trucks, that's exactly part of an integrated strategy, so which is currently not going on. So you're sort of illustrating my point further.
Okay.
Thanks.
Matthew, would you like to come back on Yoss's point quickly, and then we'll throw the floor open to questions?
Yes, obviously many points there, but firstly, I don't think you can typecast oil companies on the entire industry as simply one block. It's absolutely not the case, and I think, secondly, I regret, in fact, that efforts to decarbonize fuel has actually resulted in a debate around the carbon intensity of different kinds of crude. That was not the strategic intent. The strategic intent was to promote alternatives to crude, and where we found ourselves is having a debate around crude oil, which I think has been counterproductive. I think the bigger prize is how do we make deep savings in the carbon content of our fuel supply. And last but not least, what applies to oil also applies to hydrogen and to electrons. They can be high or low carbon, in fact even higher or lower carbon than crude oil. As we know, you are as clean as your grid.
Okay, good. Thanks, Matthew. Right, at that point I'd like to open the floor to some questions. So if you want to ask a question, please put your hand in the air. You have a microphone on your desk. I think you have to press the button. And if you could introduce yourself and your organisation, and if it's targeted at one in particular of the speakers as well. So please.
Yes, good afternoon. Chris Bellows from Fuels Europe, representing the mining industry of Europe. And I've got a couple of comments and questions for all the panelists, I guess. Firstly, on this measurement issue, and I understand where the justice is coming from, But I think if you look at the barrel of crude, 85% of the energy is used by the vehicle, less than 10% in refining, for example, and a very small percentage in the upstream, and the differences are very, very small between fields. So if we're concentrating on how we use resources efficiently, the vehicle is clearly the right place to start. The use is the right place to start. Get a leverage of 70 to 1. Secondly, on oil price, we pay $100 oil. But at the pump we pay between $200 and $250. Remember, there's a big tax rate, 170 billion euros across Europe, and yet there are no economic alternatives in lots of modes of transport at the moment. So I think it's to emphasise the technological challenges there are and economic challenges to replace oil. Just I want to come back to this question about the integration of policy. And I think certainly we would strongly believe that it's not just about one element of the policy, because all the panelists have stressed that we need integrated policy for decarbonisation. It needs to be coordinated. So I guess my question to the panelists is, what do you think is the primary driver here? Because we've talked about lots of things. Decarbonisation as part of the global agenda, air quality in cities. Is it really just about efficiency, using resources better? Is it about reducing oil consumption? And what about this balance between electrification of road transport and the other modes of transport? We see by 2035, light-duty cars will be less than a quarter of our barrel. The rest will be other forms of transport. And I agree with Mr. Karantzos, the debate is too much sort out cars, electrify cars, and we solve the transport problems. So what does the panel think about this balance?
Okay.
Okay, let me start first. For me, the key question is not, which maybe colleagues in the room will disagree with me, it's not the air quality, it's not the efficiency of transport, it's the dependency. I think we cannot afford being, for our mobility and what we do, dependent only by 85% or whatever on oil. If we stay on that, we will not be anymore in a few years' time the continent we want to be. So I think for me the most important part is dependency. Get away from oil, and how diminish, let's say, the use of oil as we can by efficiency or whatever, but try to go on alternative modes and be less dependent on oil and imports on oil. I think that's key. So if our Danish colleagues have arrived by that we have 20-25% renewables through the windmills on the sea, we can do other things as well, like that in Europe. So try to find alternative means for energy in Europe. I think that's it. So dependence is the key word for me. So can we go away from that? I think that's...
Okay. Olivier, did you want to come in? Because you didn't speak in the other round. So
Yeah. I mean, our view is the critical factor is the customer, the people. And more of our customers are urban customers. More and more of the voters are urban customers. And that's probably why we place so much emphasis on their life. What we hear from them is they need a change. And what we see with e-mobility is the incredible thing is that, first of all, it's bottom-up. It's people talking to people. It's colleagues convincing their colleagues that electric vehicle is great. Neighbors talking to neighbors. There's one factor which must not be underestimated. The second one is local initiatives. What we see is neighborhood streets taking initiatives. What we've seen in the UK, My Electric Avenue, people walking from door to door, convince their neighbors to adopt e-mobility. This is the type of things that we take a great deal of importance. And now the question of the balance of policy is critical, because we can't wait for policies to impose e-mobility. This is not the case. But when we reflect back on air quality, the quality of air in this room is excellent. It's cool, no noise, and
Wouldn't
nobody
entirely
smoking.
agree, but okay.
The minute we step outside 50 centimeters from this door, it's noisy, and we don't really care. Anything goes. And the transition or the policies that have taken non-smoking ban into effect took probably a generation. We're looking at probably the same type of combination of, first of all, top-down and immediate bottom-up adoption. Nobody would ever want to go back to smoking airplanes, I don't think. Nobody would ever want to go back to smoking in a restaurant. And that's what we see when we interview people in Norway, our first market, Germany, the UK. This is the type of feedback we get. Take control, make the move. Noise in Stockholm is becoming one of the first issues. So let's our view, our customers are urban customers. And the voters are also probably urban customers.
Mr. Kosman, did you want to come in? Or?
Well, actually, I would like to share the same opinion. I mean, for the leadership in Brussels, of course, the dependency is an important issue because we want to be stronger in foreign policy. But the success of the strategy will depend on the cities. And more people live in cities, and electric vehicle, depending on how the electricity mix is being developing, but if we manage to improve on CO2 and improve on pollution and of course improve on noise, then this will be where the decision is taking place. And 20 years from now, if you are the only one in the street who in the morning wakes up the whole neighborhood by starting the engine, then you will think about it.
Okay. Yes, did you want to come in?
No, I would agree. It's startling to see that, you know, bottom up, both in terms of people, and particularly young people, and in terms of entrepreneurialism and emerging industries. There's so much going on, and there's more going on at this very moment than I have seen in my entire career in transport. It is in a way the most exciting bottom-up kind of development that I've seen since I came into this. But it's not matched by a top-down political commitment to make it all work, and that worries me. And it's also a wasted energy in a way. And I want to also come back to what Foto said, that reducing oil is of the essence. Well, we agree with quite a few things that moved us on the charging and on the rail freight, and also on the weights and dimensions, the smarter trucks, for example. You did quite the right thing, but keeping on stimulating aviation like this, there's so much love for aviation in your house, and it's by far the most carbon intensive mode. So you need to work on your messaging here, I would say.
Okay, so we'll come back to this in the decarbonising air transport event that we'll organise in the near future. Let's take some more questions. Gentleman here and then one there.
Good afternoon, Kees Modder, Ascaro, Netherlands. I have a question for Matthew Zipper. I have a question from the perspective of a shareholder, for a long-term shareholder. I think Shell has been a very safe investment over the years. Shell is an icon of the company, one of the handful of companies which has existed for more than 100 years, and it's well known for its long-term planning. So my question is, how do you explain to a shareholder who is interested in Shell as a long-term investment that you've made the right investment?
In alternative energies. In alternative energies specifically.
Yeah, that you've made the right choices in terms of the choices for fuels which are, as you called it, molecule-based and not electron-based. And so how do you explain that? And how do you explain that if
Okay.
the investor compares you to Kodak, which was one of those other icon companies?
Okay.
Kept on developing the film for cameras, while
So let me answer that. So it's a good question,
Yeah, that's it.
fair question. So You know, the way I can best express that, it's like building two motorways. We have an old motorway that we need to keep running. It's been around a long time. But we need to build a new motorway at the same time. And we need to do both at once. But we need to keep the traffic moving whilst we still build the new road. The new road is the road you've heard described here today. The old road is a product of 100 years of continuous investment. Trillions of dollars have been spent on building up a global infrastructure around oil and gas. So, you know, the short answer is we need to do both. It's not an either or. How do we make the decisions? And I'm also a shareholder in Shell. You know, it's very simple. I have to match the returns that we seek in oil and gas. So that, you know, it's as simple as that. So my investments in alternative energies are compared like for like with other investments that we might make in other parts of the world in oil and gas. No favours. So that keeps the shareholder whole, as it were. What tips the balance in favour of alternative energies over oil and gas, if you like? What makes me build the new road, contribute to that journey, is essentially technology and policy. The better our technology, the better chance we have of building that new road. The better our policy, the better our chances of building that new road.
So the question is, how does that new road look like? Is that an infrastructure which is based on oil and gas, or molecules, or an electron? And how do you make that decision?
Well, you know, we're active in many parts of the energy market globally. I mean, we have, as I said, a competency bias towards molecules. That takes us to gas over coal, to biofuels over oil, to seek carbon capture and storage, to hydrogen, and indeed LNG. It takes us to very many things, we believe, that are going to be useful in future.
Okay, thanks. Gentleman here.
I have a question for you. Personal electric cars have been on the market for at least a year now, and how far have manufacturing costs or vehicle prices come down as a result? When can we expect people to buy them just to save money?
There's many offer in the electric vehicle world. There's very expensive car that are on sale and doing well, apparently. We have taken the option of going mass market, going from offering a product for everybody, and Nissan Leaf is demonstration of that, and ENV 200 a van, addressing the freight issue, by the way, in the city, and the e-taxi at the entry level. When we started, we also thought that the price was always too high. So what we've done is introduce a leasing option on the battery, learning from our Renault partner. It's proven to be mixed result depending on the region. And what we find today, actually, in many countries, is that we probably hit the right level of people buy the battery and the car together because they are interested in having both. We are less concerned about the price than we were when we started, probably because Tesla gave us put the scale to a level that is well, beyond expectation from our side. But so now we are fairly comfortable. Yet we are addressing, still thinking about going under this price level. And the second thing that we've not yet demonstrated anywhere is when we're going to be reaching 10 years, we will start selling the batteries, the used batteries in the Nissan Leaf, to a level that nobody has any idea. But this aspect will be, we think, good news for people starting to sell their used battery for application that we are preparing, and then we'll further put the price down for these people.
And Olivier, what's the cost of a Nissan Leaf standard model at the moment?
Well, it's 24,000 euro.
Compared to a conventional family hatchback?
Well, the question is where you take the reference point. Some people, like Norway, have decided that the polluters pay. So they tax, for example, a similar car to a higher level, and then, I don't want to name competitors, but let's say a Golf. It's the best. Sorry, it's the best-selling car in Europe. So I'm not. It would be equivalent to a Nissan Leaf. So it really depends on the country position towards e-mobility, or other people decide otherwise, and then the sticker price, depending on tax, plays a great role, can vary. But it's people can make it anything we want to. Our view is that in the car, the battery is an investment. And very often we talk about cost of electric car, but in reality, what we would like to demonstrate over time, it's an investment. Investment in terms of, simply, our simple demonstration is anybody who's buying electric car today makes a gift to the community. It's a zero emission, zero noise. Yet no one is going out and shaking the hand of the neighbor and thank you very much for that. This is an investment. This is an investment that individuals are taking upon themselves. And this investment, we think, should be rewarded to the right level, taking into consideration the downfall of using electric car and eventually make the total cost of ownership lower. Yeah.
Okay, and just a follow-up, what's the cost of a battery? Can you buy batteries separately? How much do they cost?
Gee, I must have had that question 100 times for the past 5 years. We don't have a policy of separating the cost. We don't sell batteries to anybody. What we'd like to demonstrate over time is the value. That when people start selling their batteries as used cars, they will understand the value of the car. And this whole discussion on residual value to us is the driver. And that's what matters to the customer at the end, is the value.
Fotis, you wanted to come in?
I think we should go a little bit on a higher level and think about, I plug to get my electric car or my electric bicycle. Where this energy comes from? And there is the question. I think if the energy comes from a power plant that it uses, let's say, classical fuel, forget it. If I can get it from, even I would say nuclear, but forget it. It's a forbidden world today in Europe. But if you can get it from renewables,
not where Olivier comes from.
If you can get it from, let's say, alternative means, wind, let's say, or the sun or whatever, then I think it is something you gain. So we have really to look at a higher level where really we get our energy. That's why I said the dependency for me, it is quite an important thing. Of course, if we're talking about, let's say, other issues as air quality, as efficiency is important. All of that are important. But our main problem is Europe, despite the fact that, and our politicians actually, they have said it repetitively, it's the dependency. What we do with Mr. Putin, what we're doing, let's say, with the Arab countries. And can we do something about that? Can we concentrate our efforts, what we do on mobility, what we are doing, let's say, our energy, on reducing this dependency we have today if we want to have our economy in the future working still. And at the same time, we achieve the objectives of air emissions. At the same time, we create a great market to export in China or somewhere else. And this is maybe where we have to concentrate our efforts in the years to come. That's my personal, and maybe I'm not there after a few years, but I think that's what I think about.
Okay, let's take some more questions. If indeed there are any. Yeah, gentle here behind the speakers.